But first, Pennsylvania is full of wildlife that many of you love to search out and see. Portage native Bruce Walkovich has always loved to hunt and fish along with his photography, but once he hit retirement, wildlife photography became his passion. So for years now, he's captured the most beautiful photographs of wildlife many of you would love to get. I recently visited him at home to hear his story. Bruce, thanks for having us in your beautiful home.
You're certainly welcome.
Talk about your photography, the animals, but first I want to know about you, a little bit more about you. So if you can tell everyone.
Born and raised in Portage, been involved in photography for about 50 years. As I got close to retiring, I really decided to start focusing on wildlife. I hunted and fished all my life, hardcore. Did a lot of trips out west, hunted elk. Just reached a point where I would much rather do it with a camera than any other way. So that's where I really got focused on wildlife.
But how do you go from focusing on hunting to then moving it over to photography?
Surprisingly, it's not that big of a change because I still get the same emotions seeking wildlife if I'm waiting for them, just like a hunter would be on a stand. I get every bit as excited whenever an animal appears. Everything works the same. It just means that all I have to do is click at the end and I'm done.
So where do you go for all this? You have some fantastic photos. Where have you gone? Where do you like to go the most?
I spend most of my time in this region. So locally, there's little places near here like Wilmore Dam, but I'll go to Glendale, Prince Gallitzin, I'll go to Canoe Creek, I'll go to Yellow Creek, I'll go up north, the Benezet area. And I kind of move around a lot based on the seasons, okay? In the spring, there's a lot of migratory songbirds that come through. As far as like the elk, for example, that's year-round. In the winter, it's really nice if there's some snow and things like that. So you get some beautiful pictures then. And the bulls tend to be back more in bachelor groups. So you may see, I've gotten pictures of as many as a dozen or more together. In fact, the one picture that I actually won a competition this past year was from like late November, whenever they were back together. But in the spring and the early summer, I like to try to get the fawns whenever they're first born. And then in late summer, whenever the elk are in full velvet. Once fall starts to arrive, when they strip the velvet and they start bugling and it gets into the rut. That's just one more season.
So what do you do with all these photos that you've taken? I imagine you've taken
You don't want to see my loft. I literally have thousands. I've reached a point I don't truly want to monetize it. I post a lot of it on various groups. I post them for people to freely enjoy.
When you're going to these places, kind of describe how this works, because I know we're going to be going with you on one of these. So, describe for me what you do.
The elk move around throughout the year. A lot of time it's based on the forage, the weather. Like this past summer, it was extremely dry up there. So it altered where the elk were entirely. In fact, the people who were just casual visitors who go up there in September were really upset because they weren't seeing elk.
Yeah.
Well, the reason was some of the big food plots that they're used to just driving up to and seeing lots of elk had dried out. So the elk had moved back into the forest and were much more difficult to find. There's kind of a network of maybe 8 or 10 pretty serious elk photographers that I consider friends, that we can message back and forth from time to time. In fact, half the fun is whenever we go there, we run into each other and we spend more time BSing than we do taking pictures of the elk. So we keep each other abreast of what's happening. Because it's not uncommon for, especially at the beginning of the rut, for a bull to show up in one particular area. 3 or 4 days later, he's 2 miles away.
So you get very familiar with their habits and where they're at, and then the rest of the photographers can help each other out.
Right.
And know. So then you've also seen the history of how this works in these areas you've been. So you've seen the animals come, go, the population decrease, increase.
Yes, drastically.
You want to talk about that?
When I was still hunting back probably, even like in the early 2000s, there weren't a whole lot of elk up there. There were only, maybe 100, 200 elk in that entire area. And now there's consistently 1,400, 1,500. So the numbers are dramatic. I mean, we're talking like eightfold of what they were only like 20 years ago.
In doing this, because you're retired and you love doing this, but why do you love doing it? What do you get out of it, do you think?
I've just always loved wildlife. As I got older, and then I started becoming more aware of whether there was a squirrel going by or if I saw something in the distance or whatever, and I got more interested in a lot of the other wildlife. And then I found by being free with a camera and moving, I could just see so much more of it.
How do you go about getting that good shot?
I've just reached a point where I'm just as interested in what the background looks like, what the lighting's like. So I'll go to an area knowing that, like a particular area, I know I can't go there in the morning because the lighting's bad from that location. Then I start thinking about what does the background look like. Every year I give the Keystone Elk Country Association flash drives with 400 or 500 images that they're welcome to use, you know, however they see fit. So they'll use it in some of their promotions and things like that, some of the brochures. I've managed to get a couple magazine covers out of that, and things like that.
Yeah, because I was going to say, we've heard that your photos are in that area in businesses.
Yes, they'll use them for their web pages.
Yep.
They'll get some of the images to use in their cabins and things like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that.
Do you have a memorable experience of trying to shoot any wildlife at this point? Elk? What? You're remembering something.
I've had a few run-ins. The one important thing about wildlife is you want to give them space.
Yes.
And you want to keep them in their natural surroundings. You want to have them feel comfortable. So I try very hard to not interfere with their normal activities. Unfortunately, if you're not sitting in your car, if you're out in the forest, there are times whenever they encroach on you. And you're sitting there innocently and suddenly they show up. So there have been a few encounters where I've gotten uncomfortably close to wildlife. You know, one thing people oftentimes don't understand is if you've been around wildlife enough, you can actually sense how they're reacting, whether they're stressed at all, whether there's any chance of them being aggressive, whether they're comfortable, whether they're even really aware that you're there or not. And oftentimes if they are aware, if you're not doing anything aggressive, they may look over at you.
Yeah.
You know, and then they'll go about doing. They may stand there and look for a while. But I mean, I've even had white-tailed deer who you would think would just take off when they saw you. Will just stand there and stare and stomp and just keep staring, and they'll keep jerking their head down to try to get you to move. And if you just sit there, they'll eventually just go back to what they were doing. You know.
So no close encounters?
Yes, very close encounters, but I don't want to go into deep detail.
Okay. Off the record? Well, let's just say you always have to be careful with wildlife. Now, coming up next, Bruce has advice for all of you that love to check out the animals. Welcome back to Kaleidoscope. We're talking with Bruce Walkovich. He's a wildlife photographer from Portage whose passion is capturing animals in all the beauty of nature. As our conversation continues, he has advice for those of you wanting to find these majestic animals and capture some beautiful shots for yourself. What advice would you give to other people when they go up there and, like you said, they get frustrated because they've only maybe seen 2 animals in 4 days, or, you know, what to do, what not to do?
Right. Well, I'll tell you a couple of things. The very first thing that I tell people is respect private property. There's a lot of private property up there, and you just simply should not go on it. The second thing is to respect the animals, that you don't encroach on their space.
Yes.
You don't have them feel pressured at all, and be aware of how they're acting. Because there's times when I've seen a crowd of people observing elk, and I could tell that a big bull wanted to leave the field, and he wanted to leave the field right in their direction, and they keep encroaching on it. So I'll tell them, you folks, you need to back off. Probably the third big thing is if you're not seeing elk, ask. I've become very well known on some of those Facebook pages, some of the Benezet Facebook pages. So I will get messages all the time. We're coming up next week. Can you give me any advice of where to go and that?
Yeah.
And I'll try to give them, some information of what's happening up there. And you also should be able to ask people like at the Elk Center.
When you're putting all these together, Explain the process to me.
Okay, sure. Whether you're using your phone or whether you're using a camera that's basically on automatic, it's typically shooting JPEGs.
Okay.
And when it's shooting a JPEG, that means that some engineer has put algorithms into the phone, into the camera, to kind of suggest what it thinks the picture should look like.
Okay.
So it'll choose the contrast, it'll choose the saturation, and things like that. And that's what you get. Okay? For more serious photographers, we shoot on what's called RAW instead of JPEG. And what that means is, rather than the camera trying to decide, it will just gather every last bit of information it can gather in the shadows, in the highlights, and everything, and record that. So when you look at a RAW image, it tends to look a little flat because it has tried to take everything into account.
Okay.
Some people will tend to oversaturate and make their pictures really bright and strong.
Yeah.
Some people will try to make them a little softer. I do very limited editing. It typically takes me a minute or two for any image that I want to really seriously edit. There's no better example than an eagle. A bald eagle.
Oh, I'm sure.
Bright white head and tail, really dark body.
Yep.
If you just shoot in JPEG, good luck. You might get a washed out head, you might get a totally black body.
Yep.
If you shoot in RAW and adjust, you can see the feathers in the head, you can see the feathers in the body, because it's all there. And on a RAW file, it's there. You just need to pull it back out.
But you also have your photographs on wine bottles, you've done some competitions. I mean, your stuff is out there.
The Keystone Elk Country Association has a calendar contest every year. And if you win that, you get your photograph on the cover of the next year's calendar. Benezet Wines puts it on the label on a bottle.
Okay.
They make little embroidered patches.
Oh.
So you get those three things if you win. 2 of the last 3 years I've won that.
Nice.
So that's where those things came from. They've used my photos on several corporate magazine covers, as well as the official magazine of the Elk Foundation. Pennsylvania Parks and Forests, I've won their Best in Show like 3 of the last 7 years, I believe. DCNR actually has some of my photographs in their offices in Harrisburg. So I have gotten a little bit of that recognition, but it's validation for what I do. But I honestly don't seek it. Like I said, when I put my stuff on Facebook, it's like, go ahead, knock yourself out, do whatever you'd like with it. Just hope you appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's all.
What goes through your head when you're trying to get that nice shot of them?
I'm obsessed with them. I'm obsessed with wildlife. And it doesn't matter if it's a tiny little songbird or if it's an 800-pound elk. I'd like to shoot an image that when it's done, that when you look at the picture, number one, your eyes are focused on something. Your eyes are pulled to some part of the image, and it evokes some type of emotion rather than just being, okay, yeah, that's an elk, that's an eagle, that's whatever. And a lot of times it's the background, a lot of times it's the lighting, you know, and things like that that'll change everything. That'll make a picture look really flat or somewhat exciting.
If you missed the beginning of Kaleidoscope, we introduced you to Bruce Walkovich. He's a wildlife photographer from Portage who has a passion for the beauty of animals in their habitat. We wrap up now with these stunning shots. That is some talent right there. Thank you, Bruce.